It's important to understand anything when we talk about dhikr and awrad. It goes back to, it's an affirmation of who we could be and who we ought to be, and something of this, you could say, like a meta-narrative, a human origin story. When you're in dhikr, you're reminding yourself who you should be with, and where you came from. And it allows you to place yourself in these kind of coordinates of. One of the things you'll notice about the modern world is there's so much fragmenting. It's loud. There's a lot of noise in the modern world. You know, which previous people that they're talking about different things now in the health kind of world, about like just being so inundated by different forms of stimuli, whether visual or hearing, and you have to say something. It's in the nature of the modern world. So what is it, a yes or a no? There's almost like this very kind of awkward interaction with people, because we've forgotten how to intuit communication through our hearts. And I'm not just talking about at the highest levels of wilaya and the awliya, I'm just talking about how to be human with one another. Dhikr reminds us how to be human. It's rehumanizing. And what that means is it puts you back through consistency into a state where you're able to now address other people, because you know your place in the world. I mean, one of the things he mentions here, it's an amazing introduction. Like, don't just involve yourself in dhikr and awrad and you haven't like cleansed the cup. The ulama of tasawwuf, they talk about that the light of abstinence is stronger than the light that's generated through just doing stuff. So you could be going through things and doing lots of dhikr, going through the motions, but you're not really feeling anything. And one of the reasons for that is you're doing something that's displeasing to Allah, that needs kind of like a splint under the surface. You can feel it. It's like a dull pain. It needs to be taken out. It needs to be addressed. And then the dhikr will hit differently. Even if we look in terms of the greatest form of dhikr is the Quran, and it's interesting the great people of the great spiritual paths, they really kind of honed in on that reality. So for example, like reading Surah Al-Waqi'ah after Asr, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, complained about his rizq, and he prescribed to read Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Although some of the shuyukh, they say be careful of reading it just to get monetary rizq. They say even certain things like praying the duha prayer, it's one of the means to unlock, because these almost like khaza'in, these treasure troves in the heavens, and they unlock. It's like clouds, like a cloud in a certain, if you alter it in a certain way or affect it in a certain way, the rain will start to fall. Same thing, it spiritually activates certain things spiritually. But they say they actually admonish people, like don't pray duha prayer because you just want decent bank balance or whatever it is, a bit of extra cash, and pray it for Allah. And that's the point. The people of Allah, they always call to Allah. They always call to Allah. They never call to themselves. Never call to themselves. They always call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's where they're the best people to be around. They become the dhikr. People say, astaghfirullah, what do you mean they become the dhikr? Because they're so in line in that rhythm to the very depths of their being. Their minds, their bodies, their souls become so aligned to this dhikr, these sacred rhythms, they now become a reminder. As the Prophet ﷺ said, when asked about who are the people of Allah, it's those people, when gazed upon, when you look at them, Allah is remembered. Allah is remembered. You talk about it. So if we're going to look into it in the context of Alastu bi rabbikum, that's the beginning. Am I not your Lord? The souls responded, Bala. And they say the souls responded in different capacity. It wasn't just a concoffee of absolutely Bala. There were some people that were a bit delayed. Some people were a bit hesitant. Like not all souls the same. And that has a spilling over in terms of its spiritual effect in the dunya. So the dhikr is to bring us back to that primordial state. You look in terms of the way the shuyukh design the adhkar for different seasons and different times and different days. So we recognize and honor those sacred times. It's look, often when people talk about, in terms of our current, nature of our lifestyle, modern lifestyle, it's like this is the real world. They go to Mecca and Medina, we've got to go back to the real world. That's not the real world. Mecca and Medina and the experience you have there going around the Kaaba, that's the real world. The Shuyukh, they even mention in terms of going around the Kaaba. I don't even like to use the word anti-clockwise because it kind of acquiesces to this, either clockwise or anti. Before the clock was invented because of the Industrial Revolution, all that kind of stuff, we're not going to dirty the Majlis with all that kind of stuff. But before that, everything, the entire cosmos, has a rhythm, has a flow. And if you look in terms of at the sub-molecular level, the atom, and then if you look at the solar systems, it goes round. وَكُلُّ فِي فَلَكٍ يَسْبَحُونَ. The beautiful word in the Arabic language. Everything in its orbit is swimming. There's a swimming in the orbit. It's divinely appropriated. The human being, given our importance, is not left out of the equation, should we choose to align to it. So in many ways, dhikr is cultivated. It's like, what do they talk about, the fascia? And this kind of amazing thing, it's only now coming more into the health awareness in the West. They often talk about Chinese medicine, meridians and the different kind of, in the West they're kind of that sounds silly because we can't test for it empirically, so they say. But they have this thing, for example, they'll massage the fascia into, but it's like a combing of the body's fibers beneath the skin. And what's amazing about they're finding it carries all sorts of different almost like codes and understanding. You can hold on to emotions in that part of your body, and it leads to tension. So if you look at that by analogy, these rhythms in our dhikr, and when we wake up in the morning, we have a certain kind of form of adhkar. When we go to bed at night, there's a certain kind of adhkar. There's certain days of the week, like we mentioned Surah Al-Waqi'ah, and this is the greatest form of dhikr. The dhikr which is from the Quran that the Prophet ﷺ informed should be read at a given time. For example, Surah Al-Waqi'ah after Asr, typically. Another one is Surah Al-Kahf on Jum'ah. If it's all of Surah Al-Kahf, that's beautiful. If we can't do that, they say the first 10 verses and the last 10 verses. If we can't do that, they say the first 5 and the last 5. And some of the people of insight, they say part of the sir, of the mystery of why that's so important. And as we know, it's one of the ways to protect oneself from the Dajjal. Reading of Surah Al-Kahf. How do we understand? There's mystic realities we can't understand. But part of the sir, part of the reality, is the Prophet ﷺ is mentioned in those verses. And the more that we connect to him, the more that those will be protected from that Dajjalic pollution and energy. So he taught us ﷺ, it's like this combing, in a rhythmic fashion. And part of the beauty of our spirituality as Muslims in our tradition is it's not like take a pill, take a substance, feel something, crash, start again. A lot of the time, this is why people often stumble, as they say in the beginning of the spiritual path, because oftentimes it's not that much fun. It's just it's just like saying stuff, or just doing certain things at certain times. But what you're doing is you're in a very subliminal level. You're aligning your consciousness to the rhythm of the universe. Going back to the context of the Kaaba, and having, as they mentioned, the part of the sir of the heart being aligned to the Kaaba, you're now mimicking. You're rehumanizing, and by process of doing so, realigning to everything in the cosmos, in the created world. If you look above the Kaaba, to the Bayt al-Ma'mur, as the angels are doing this, you're mimicking the angelic realm. Now we can't do that every day. Not everyone can go on Hajj and Umrah by implication every single day. But it's the same principle of aligning one's heart, going back to this rhythm. Look at the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that can seemingly seem simple. So for example, his love for tiyamun, inclining towards doing things with one's right hand, or one's right foot first, for example. Now if you think an entire ummah, body of people, are doing that, Do you not think that's going to have an effect on the subconscious kind of nature of an entire community? Maybe at levels that we can't understand, but just gravitating towards the right hand side. Yeah? Or doing things 3 times. Thrice is an archaic term. Once, twice, thrice, 3 times. Tathlith in the Arabic language. You know, you'll notice that, especially like drinking, you just do it almost without habit. You get used to 1, 2, 3, and then you put it down. Those kind of things are going to cultivate something about you, the full extent of which we're not going to be able to really understand. It's going to have a profound effect on you as an individual. And then in terms of the household, why did they talk about the person that makes dhikr in their own home and cultivates the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in their own home has such a profound effect? It's because it aligns the hearts. If the only thing that brings us together is material things, it causes the heart to dissipate. This is why you have people talk about oh, you guys are just, talking about doing dhikr all the time. We need to get into what's the social, geopolitical situation in the if you don't understand that this is a heart-centric affair, not to the detriment of intellect, not to the detriment of mind, but ala wa hiya al-qalb, this is about the heart. How are you going to understand everything else? إذا صلحت صلح الجسم كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسم كله ألا وهي القلب. If it becomes rectified, the entire body becomes rectified. If it becomes stagnant and putrid and foul, then the entire body does. ألا وهي القلب, he said, this is the heart. Some of the people of insight, they say this is an analogy for the ummah. If the ummah becomes more heart-centric, the entire jasad, meaning the entire ummah, everything falls into line. If you look in previous, we're in this blessed city, a lot of the times we see the remnants, the relics, the architecture, the beautifully worn out, stairway into the masajid has been worn through those feet that have trodden. That should draw us to something more symbolic of what's going on deeper. What was the nature of the hearts that held those things together? In order to have a civilization and a thriving society, there has to be a gravitational pull. There has to be something that there's a nature. A qutb is a pole which a vast affair revolves around. It's like a vortex. It brings you in. It keeps those orbits in line. If you're just going off on your own orbit and everyone's going into their own orbit, you're going to have you're going to crash, and that's exactly what's happening. So much of these things often we, even oftentimes as modern people, when we engage in spiritual practice, it's very much kind of this is good for me, it's healing for me, it makes me a better person. Great, but you also don't have the luxury of just thinking it's about you. You have a duty as someone from Bani Adam to know that if you fall short, you'll have a negative effect on those around you. The most palpable example of that is people within those households, your sphere of influence, as it were. However, there's a reality that there's a spiritual pollution. If we neglect our dhikr and we're breathing out ghafla into the world, the more we cultivate our hearts with remembrance, and I'm talking about real remembrance that wajalat qulub, when the hearts go into the state of awe. As much as we can, we call ourselves to that. It doesn't mean every single prayer that we do, everything, but sometimes people talk about this and they're saying it's too hard, it's too optimal. So what's the other option? We acquiesce. We just do it, whatever. No, that's why we have the shuyukh to call us to task. You could be something great. Okay, and they understand very well that we're going to have off moments. Let's be realistic. There's times when the prayer, and you just think was there a single moment of presence in that whole, it's functional because it's like a spinning top. Those old toys, it's round and you go like this and you just leave it and it keeps on spinning around. The nature of human consciousness is like that. If you're constantly throwing into your mind, into your heart, your eyes, your ears, ghafla, you can't just switch on and Allahu Akbar and in this, ethereal type state that's just, it doesn't work like that. That's why this concept of preparing for things is so important. Preparing, wudu as a preparation, not just as something to get out the way, to get the fard out the way. That's not what it's about. And dhikr is the same. Dhikr is the same. So how do we prepare?